Colorado got humiliated by Nebraska 28-10 in Lincoln. Listen, I'm rooting for Deion to succeed down there in Boulder, but the more Colorado football I watch, the more concerned I grow about Deion's operation down there, because in the first half against Nebraska tonight, Colorado looked like Bishop Sycamore. Y'all remember that fake high school football team that had these fake recruits that tried to make it seem like they were 3- and 4-star guys and they got blew out by IMG? That's how Colorado looked to start out this game against Nebraska. And at the end of the first half, they had negative 23 rushing yards. I've never seen a performance in all my years watching college football, right hand on the Bible, where I've seen the offense get negative yardage their first couple of possessions. I mean, after their first opening possession, when they went 3 and out, I knew things were about to get ugly. Then you got Shedeur throwing an interception early, makes it 14-0. This was a nightmare game for Colorado supporters out there, because the biggest issues with this program got exposed by Nebraska. This is a poorly coached team. You can love Deion Sanders and root for him to succeed, but you gotta be honest about the coaching going on down there with that program. This was a poorly coached team in this game. The offensive line couldn't block anybody. I was watching it with a couple of my buddies, and they were saying, man, that offensive line can't even move. They getting pushed back, and the defensive line barely got any pass rush on Dylan Raiola. Meanwhile, Shedeur Sanders got sacked 6 times in this game. And with how bad Colorado's offensive line was last season, you would have thought that Deion would have found the way to fix this problem with all the guys that he brought in through the transfer portal. But either his coaching is terrible because he doesn't know how to develop these offensive linemen, or either him and his staff have terrible player evaluation skills, because the guys they are bringing in aren't better than the dudes they had last year. And this team, in certain moments of this game, looked worse than what they did last year. They definitely don't look better. The wide receivers are good, but what's the point of having all these dynamic pass catchers if you can't give them opportunities to catch the football? You got Travis Hunter, who was going at Shedeur Sanders, knocking at him for not giving him the football. I mean, Travis, how is Shedeur supposed to get you the ball when he has no time to throw you the football? As soon as he drops back and sees you open, he's getting sacked. There are too many issues with this Colorado program to just ignore and say Nebraska is just a quality team. No, Colorado is supposed to be a quality team. Colorado destroyed Nebraska last year. You can't use the excuse of Nebraska being a good team to justify the bad coaching that we saw out of Deion Sanders and his coaching staff tonight. The defense played well in the second half, but the offense didn't help the defense out because they were inefficient. They couldn't sustain drives. They couldn't give Shedeur any time to make any big plays from within the pocket. Shedeur didn't have a good night. The whole team had a bad night. You can't just pin this loss on one person. This is a conservative effort, but the majority of the blame has to go to Deion Sanders for not having this team prepared. This team started out looking like a junior varsity high school squad. You got Dylan Raiola looking like Patrick Mahomes' twin. Not only does he have Mahomes' jersey number, but he also has a lot of mannerisms similar to Patrick Mahomes. The way he throws the football, the way that he threw that big touchdown when things broke down off platform across his body. When Dylan Raiola gets to his junior year, Nebraska is going to be very scary, because by that point, they should more than have enough talent to not only compete for the Big Ten Conference, but to maybe be a national title contender. Dylan Raiola is a program-changing quarterback. You get a guy like him at quarterback, and he can resurrect your football program. Nebraska has been dead and irrelevant for over the last couple of years. But now that you have this Dylan Raiola kid, and he actually is good, has a lot of potential to be a transcendent talent, Nebraska football is on the rise. And regardless of how bad Colorado ends up being this season, this is an important win for Matt Rule in his second season because it shows growth. Last year, you lost to Colorado. They only won 4 games. This year, you beat them. You're winning games that you weren't able to win last year, and it's mostly due to you having a great defense, but dependable quarterback play. Dylan Raiola took care of the football. He outplayed Shedeur Sanders, which may sound crazy to hear, but he did. He looked better than Shedeur. He was the better of the 2 quarterbacks tonight. And Colorado, with the rest of their schedule going up against Colorado State next week, I don't even know if they're going to win more games than what they did last year with how bad their offensive line played. In the second half, they did turn things around a little bit. They got more going offensively than what they did in the first half, but it still was nothing to write home about. And just with how bad this team looked on the field tonight, I would be embarrassed if I was Deion Sanders. Because now more and more people that have supported this football team are now starting to realize, you're not that good of a coach. You're kind of looking like a salesman. It's one thing to hype up and promote your program, but it's another thing when you're not able to back it up on the field. And all this loss did was further hurt the perception of Colorado football in the eyes of the media, the fans, and potential recruits. If I'm Juju Lewis, I wouldn't want to go play for you next year. I might as well just go to Indiana or stay committed to USC, because if this offensive line is as bad as what it is for Shedeur, why would I think that anything is going to be better if I was to come play for you? Jordan C, and I kind of felt bad for him because Deion was cussing all the offensive linemen out, including him in the fourth quarter, and I just kind of felt bad because if you're Jordan C and you're like, damn, man, like, this is what I chose to play for? This is what I chose to spend my next year playing college football for? An awfully close football team? And if I'm Jordan C, and I'm kind of thinking about hitting the transfer portal after the season because I might have made a mistake. Maybe I do need to go to Maryland. And there are coaches that will open their arms for Jordan Seaton because there is a lot of talent. There is a lot of upside. He's probably the best offensive lineman Colorado has. And that's saying something because he's a true freshman. And it's not like the guys that Deion brought in were bench players at their previous schools. The majority of the starters on Colorado's O-line started at their previous programs for a good amount of games, and they were pretty decent. But it just shows that you can't just build a team from the portal, treat this like it's NFL free agency, and act like you're going to have an improved team if you don't have good coaching. When you have an offensive line, regardless of how much talent they have, they still got to have good communication. They got to know their assignments. That's why the majority of college football's best offensive lines are units where you have guys like Nebraska's tonight that played 100+ games together. Those are the units that got good chemistry. They know their assignments. They're able to communicate when pressures come in a certain way, or they know how to change up their schemes in the face of different defensive fronts. Colorado doesn't have the ability to do that. And they're showing film of other teams. That just shows you just how badly coached they are. Why can't you watch your own film and help your players grow by assessing your performance? Why do you got to get motivated and inspired off North Dakota State hustling to the ball every play? This was a very bad and eye-opening performance that we saw out of Colorado tonight in their loss 28-10 to Nebraska, because it gives you a lot of skepticism about Deion Sanders, if this dude is even qualified to be a head coach. And that's not hating. That's just asking an honest question. Is Deion Sanders really qualified to be a head coach? Because it doesn't look like it. It looks like he's a big name in a big pond. It looks like he's biting off more than he can chew as the head coach of Colorado football. This dude doesn't even know how to utilize his timeouts. He doesn't know how to manage the clock. There was a situation before halftime. Colorado's trying to get in the field goal range, and he's just wasting time The clock's going from 20 to 19 to 16, and then he waits to 11 seconds left on the clock to call a timeout. What are you doing? It doesn't take a genius to have good clock management. When I criticize certain coaches when it comes to clock management, I feel it's a fair criticism. It's not one of those things, oh, you're not in the code, you're not a coach, you're not in that situation, you wouldn't know how to call a timeout. Neither, when you can learn basic time management from just playing Madden or college football 25. It will always confuse me how head coaches struggle to manage the clock when I really believe that time management is one of the most simplistic concepts that you can master as a head coach. If you don't have that on point, then everything else is probably not that good neither, if you just don't know how to properly assess in-game situations. You know, he snapped on the offensive line because they can't even get a push to get a 4th and 1 conversion when the coaching gets the issue. If Deion doesn't look qualified, what makes you think that anybody else on the staff is qualified? Pat Shurmur, their offensive coordinator, is a downgrade from the dude they had calling the plays last year, Sean Lewis. He's the head coach of San Diego State right now. Pat Shurmur has been fired several times as a head coach and several times as an OC. He's never been a good play caller, and there was no reason to believe that Colorado's offense was going to be that better with him taking over play calling duties from Sean Lewis. This team looks exactly like what they did last year. You can't block anybody. If anything, you may look worse. Your offensive line just got pushed back every play in the first quarter. I've never seen a team have negative 20-something rushing yards in the first quarter. They had negative 23 yards in the first quarter. They didn't even get a lick of offense. They got pushed back every play. It was insanity to me. Insanity. I've never seen a team just go backwards. At this level, you would have thought that Colorado was North Dakota State and Nebraska was Alabama. And Nebraska is going to be a good team. But tonight they looked like they were damn Georgia or something. And they could have ran up the score, but I believe after halftime, they took some of their foot off the pedal. And they kind of eased up a little bit. And that's what allowed Colorado to get back in this game. But this was an awful display of coaching that we saw. I know I'm going to lose some subscribers, but I don't even care anymore. I cannot just hold water for a guy that consistently puts out a poor product every single week. You can love Deion Sanders, but you got to give criticism when it's deserved. And he deserves a lot of it tonight. Regardless of how good of a team Nebraska is, Colorado has too much talent to just perform this poorly than what they did tonight. Some of the issues isn't because that offensive line is bad. Even though Deion handpicked these players, some of these issues comes down to coaching, guys not knowing their assignments, guys missing blocks. You know, I'm kind of starting to look at Deion in a different light after watching this performance against Nebraska, because this team looked unprepared. You don't have a lot of depth. You went down with Shiloh getting injured. You lost a defensive lineman. Travis Hunter got banged up. I already know Shedeur Sanders is banged up because he was running for his life back there. At this point, is it a fair question to ask if Shedeur and Travis Hunter should just sit out for the rest of the season, prepare for the combine so they can protect their draft stock? Because they're going to get injured. Travis Hunter doesn't even want to get taken out of the game, especially when you're getting embarrassed like this. Travis Hunter is a true competitor. I can't get mad at him when he's complaining about wanting to get the football because he wants to make a play. He knows that this team ain't that good, and him, Shedeur, and only a select few group of people can do something about it. But this college football season has been really weird, so I'm not going to write Nebraska. Well, I'm not going to write Colorado off yet, because with the way that Arizona has been struggling and the rest of these other Big 12 teams have been struggling, there's no telling who Colorado could be. You know, because a lot of these other Big 12 schools don't really look that hot themselves. You know, so maybe Colorado can still get the 6-7 wins. We got to see this season progress some more. Nebraska, is good enough to be an 8-9 win team. They should start 7-0 before they have their big matchup against Ohio State. But Colorado definitely looked pedestrian in this game. They made Nebraska look like a better team than what they actually are. Nebraska's a good team, but tonight you would have thought they were Georgia or prime Clemson. Really disgusting performance that we witnessed out of this Colorado team coached by Coach Prime. And they got to fix some things quick, because this season could get a lot worse than what it did last year. And it's really surprising, because you would have thought with them playing in the Big 12, a conference that's not as good as what the Pac-12 was last year, you would have thought that the performance would have been better. I don't even know if they can beat Colorado State or if they can even beat Baylor, for crying out loud.